So, hi everyone, I am SuperViperT302, and this is going to be a Gradius 3. So, before I get started, here is my settings. As you can see, all default. Weight level set to 2 for reasons you will understand in a moment. This is my control scheme. And, alright, I'm sure you're kind of all aware of this game, so let's just go ahead and get right in 3, 2, 1, video games. So I'm going to play on the technical course so that I have access to the full game, and here we go. So this is Gradius 3 Densetsu Kawa Shinwa E, which I probably just horribly mispronounced. It translates to From Legend to Myth. Despite the name, it is not technically the third game in the Gradius series, because you had Salamander and Life Force before it, and then there were also the two MSX titles. It is technically the third arcade entry that goes by the title Gradius. Also, I completely messed up my control scheme, so we're just gonna roll with it, because why not? So this is the first stage, this is the desert stage, so just to get this out of the way, yeah, in case you've all haven't heard, this is deemed one of the hardest games in the series. That's kind of its own fault, and that's also because of the fact that Konami released this game about 5 months too early, and what we have here is only about like 60% of what was actually in the game. So there was a lot of interesting programming decisions made here and there that you'll kind of understand. Also, I'm pretty sure I just killed that hatch a little too early, but it's okay. So you're noticing that I'm farming from these hatches in stage 1, and that's actually just to boost score. Extra lives aren't necessarily sparse in this game, but for a particular stage that will come up near the end of the game, I want to have as many extra lives as possible going into it. So I'm going to be trying to get a lot of early score out of these early hatches. And in case anybody's wondering, I'm playing on the PlayStation 2 using the Gradius 3 and 4 port. That's why the music and audio is slightly different. The aspect ratio is a little bit different, and that's also why the title screen looks kind of different. So this was released to arcades in 1989. It's a very ambitious game, I'll give it that. It's got a lot of really cool design, and it's got one of the best soundtracks in the series by a long shot. It's just that it has some not so great design choices. Okay, so this is the first boss. This is Goliath. This boss is honestly pretty easy as long as you just kind of hang back here. The spider webs can't hurt you, and the sandballs are sort of easy to evade. Really, the only scary part is when you kind of have to make a surprise dodge and when Goliath advances on you. So I'll go ahead and kind of talk about some of the basics of this game. So I'm playing with Type B. Type B is just generally the most agreed upon weapon loadout to use for a quick 1cc in this game, mainly because it has the spread bomb, which is the missile that I'm using. The spread bomb originated from Gradius 2, and it carries over to this game. It has a really big explosion radius to the point where it just completely wrecks multi-hit enemies. And in addition to that, you can actually fire 2 missiles at a time in this game. So that greatly increases the damage output that a spread bomb has, especially if you have something like auto fire. And in addition to that, the other weapons of Type B are pretty good. So I'm going to be using the Ripple Laser here. The Ripple Laser has a bit of an underrated reputation from what I'd say. It's actually not as bad as a weapon as you might think, especially in this game where it's just as powerful as just about any other laser. And even though it does have a growing in size hitbox, it won't get affected by collision for the most part. Alright, so here's the bubble stage. This is where I'd say most people who first start playing this game are really going to get stumped. Because as you can see, the rank has already taken quite a massive increase. Gradius 3's rank system is a bit kind of more linear based than most arcade games that Konami would produce later, where it's mostly tied to difficulty setting, stage and loop area progress, and your power-up progress. And as you can see here, with these bubble stages, the bubbles are consistent, and in addition to that, Spread Bomb and Ripple Laser is just an amazing combination against them. This is easily one of the better weapon combinations to use against these types of multi-hit targets. And you probably also just caught on to something, slowdown. This game has a lot of it. It's pretty notorious for that, especially the SNES port. You're probably familiar with the toned-down SNES port of this game that a lot of players regard as the better game. personally, my opinion is of the opposite, but we're not going to get into that. So basically, so slowdown is actually kind of pivotal in how this game is played. So the PlayStation 2 version of this game actually has the ability to combat the lag that the arcade version experiences, but first of all, there are a lot of strategies that sort of revolve around slowdown, and also it's not really arcade accurate. So I'm actually playing with weight level set to 2, which means this will be the maximum slowdown that is possible on this board. It's actually a bit more than what the arcade version has, but weight level 1 is actually too little. So this is sort of the lesser of two evils. And slowdown is really useful in this game because you can make a lot of these like super tight maneuvers that are a lot harder to do when the game is running at full speed, but it is something you sort of have to adjust to and get used to. So now we have these bubble enemies coming from the ceiling. These guys are normally, oh god, that will almost hit me. Another thing that's there's a number of things about this game that are kind of contribute to its overall sort of port-ish design, and the first is actually hit detection. A lot of hitboxes in this game are just downright bad. There's no underselling it. Like there's no way to sugarcoat any of it. The hit detection in this game is just terrible. Like if you use the Arcade Archives port of this game has a feature where you can actually view the hitboxes, and some of them are they don't make any sense at all. So you can get hit by something even when it looks like it was nowhere near you. Hopefully that won't come into play at all during this run, but it could happen. So this is Bubble Eye. You cannot create enough of a hole in him in order to stay in front of him the entire time, so I did have to sort of start by going above him there, but now I can just kind of easily carve through the eye and take care of that. Pretty simplistic fight. Now we're going on to stage 3. This is another pretty big difficulty spike. So I'm going to be activating the force field here, and then I'm also going to activate a third speed up. So the main reason for activating that third speed up is obviously to have the higher speed, but also in the Gradius series, the more speed ups you have, the further out your options are spread out. And so having my options spread out this far is actually going to be pretty useful throughout the rest of the game here. So I'm going to be sticking with 3 speed ups for pretty much the remainder of the run. So now we have the traditional volcano stage of the Gradius series. It's actually kind of split up into multiple different sections. And as per usual, I'm going to be kind of farming from the hatches here in order to kind of get my score up as high as possible. This section is where you're really going to kind of get to see it shine. I'm going to be mostly kind of using the clip side here and sort of the layout of it to shield myself from this onslaught of bullets, which this game sort of loves to do to you. And what's that 7 power-up slot I have added? Well, there you go. So in this game, there's a 7th power-up slot. It's the exclamation mark. When you're using type select, it defaults to what's known as a Mega Crash. So there's actually no blue capsules in this game, but in replacement, they actually added the Mega Crash feature, which basically does the exact same thing. And if you're wondering why the music changed, there was a certain enemy at the bottom of the screen that I killed using the Mega Crash, and it switches it. This is actually a medley of Free Flyer from Gradius 1, Fly High from Salamander, and Burning Heat from Gradius 2. All really good songs. And this medley is I just like this medley, so I figured it's worth showing off. So I'm actually going to switch to the tail gun here. So while the screen is shaky here, you do have to be somewhat careful of those falling jags of land. I'm just going to kind of bait them out to make it a little bit easier. So the tail gun is actually very, very useful in this game because there's going to be a lot of situations where I'm going to want to fire directly behind me. The one thing you may have noticed about this type is that there isn't really any good upwards firing options aside from using your options for that sort of stuff, but honestly in this game it doesn't matter aside from like 1 or 2 places. So there's the Mega Crash again because I felt like it. So now we're transitioning into a bit of an underground section here. So this first section sort of starts off with a bit of a branching path you can take here. So if you go down this bottom path, it's just a bunch of volcanoes, which doesn't really do much for score. But this, going the top path, is sort of a maze with a bunch of hatches that you can take out. And each of these hatches is 300 points. So if I can get a lot of them, that'll really boost my score, which again, I really want to do because I want all the extra lives I can get. There is a chance, though, that some of the hatches might not spawn due to, I'm assuming, sprite overload, which still exists on this board for some obscure reason. And this is where I think one of the major downfalls of slowdown is something to talk about, because one thing that's sort of annoying about it is that you can have slowdown sort of stop abruptly when you're trying to make a tight maneuver, and as a result, you actually overshoot how far you are trying to move, and then you'll just crash into the scenery and die. And the reason why that's a problem in this game is checkpoint placement is the other main issue with this game's design. Almost none of the checkpoints in this game are recoverable. There are only a very few select points where you can die and your run will instantly be over. So this game is really just about not dying for the first several stages and then having all of your life reserved for the end game. So we're coming up on the end of this hatch section here. There's just a few more I can take care of. While I'm in this section, I want to give a shout out to my good friend Laser Trap Productions, who has an amazing piano cover of this song and actually quite a few other Gradius songs on his YouTube channel, on their YouTube channel. So make sure you go check it out. It's a very underrated channel, and it's a very good cover too. It actually goes through all three of the key changes you hear here. So now in this section, we're going to kind of get rid of the vertical scrolling for a little bit. The tail gun is really going to be useful here, because at this point there's going to be a lot of jumper enemies coming from behind, and similar to Gradius 2, they fire sunburst spreads of 16 bullets. So I really want to make sure there's not that many of them on screen if possible. So the tail gun is really going to be useful here, because they're all going to be coming from behind. And I can use the Mega Crash here. So now I'm going to switch to the Ripple Laser, because we've got this dirt digging section to get through. All of these rocks are indestructible, like if you were playing the SNES version on arcade mode. They're not usually a huge threat. You do kind of have to make sure you carve out the dirt below them so that they'll fall. And sometimes they'll just land on like a single pixel of dirt, so you kind of have to be mindful of that. And then you also don't want to run into a single pixel of dirt. So yeah, like that rock, it looks like it's not standing on anything, but there's just like a tiny little thing that I need to shoot out there. I'm actually going to be taking the bottom half here because there's just a little bit more room to work with here. One thing I haven't mentioned yet about the force field in this game is that, unlike most other Gradius games, the force field will actually take 6 hits instead of 3, which easily makes it the best shield in the game by far. It's even better than Reduce, which is only available in the weapon edit mode. Not a whole lot going here, it's just a matter of kind of making it through these tight spaces. I mentioned that hitboxes are bad, but they can actually be kind of bad in the reverse direction as well, because, okay, my force field's pretty close to running out, so I'm just going to kind of intentionally lose it if I can. And that's also because I want to have double highlighted. That's going to be problematic. This is problematic. Okay, we're just going to kind of rush through here and do this. This is not going as planned, but we're going to make do with it anyways. So because I have my buttons set differently than I normally do, I'm just going to kind of mash here and hope for the best. So I'm going to be trying to farm from 2 hatches at once here. Okay, this is not going well already. So I'm going to be kind of, so this is in a little Iron Maiden section. This is sort of a callback to the first game in the way. This is not normally what I do here. Normally I have rapid fire and rapid missile set to separate buttons for things like this, but I accidentally forgot to switch that back before doing this run. So I'm going to have to kind of improvise in a few different sections. It's not going to make a huge deal on the strategies I use for the most part. It'll just only come into play every now and then. But thankfully these rocks can shield me from the bullets. So because I don't have double highlighted, I'm going to have to use an alternate strat at the end here. the third evolution of Big Core Mark III. It's actually a miracle I made it through that alive. So I'm not gonna. There's normally a quick pull you can do on Big Core Mark III, but because I don't have the tail gun, I can't really do it. So instead, I'm just gonna have to time this boss out. Because when you kill the front two cores, you get this really, really fast laser attack that's really, really difficult to dodge even with slowdown. So the easier way to do it is just to memorize the bouncing laser patterns. So that's what I'm going to do instead. And on the PS2 version, it's actually a bit shorter than on the actual arcade version, so that's kind of a bit of a plus. And here it's just forward, back, forward. Or back, forward, back, actually. My bad. My muscle memory was right, my actual memory was wrong. And then here's just going to be back, forward, and it should self-destruct. So if I were playing this in the beginner mode, the game would be over by then, but we still have a few more stages to go through. Alright, so this is one of the only stages in the entire Gradius series. In fact, I think it's the only one aside from Solar Assault that is in, technically in 3D. There are no enemies here. There's not even a boss in this stage. There's just a bunch of power-ups. They don't give any score in this stage for some reason. So, you can't actually score in this stage at all, but this is one of the few stages where you can die and actually not have a credit end immediately. So, that's kind of nice. And it's a bit of a nice little breather. Really, the only thing you have to watch out for is running into the walls. And, again, the positions of everything are consistent each time. We're just about at the end of the stage. And there we go. So at the start of this stage, we have some infinite vertical scrolling, because this is going to be the Moai stage, which is definitely one of the hardest stages in the game. If you die at any point in this stage, you basically can't recover, because the Moais in this game have some pretty bad physics. Also, that was the Option Hunter, and I just killed it using a Mega Crash. That's one of the nice things about having it. There's actually 3 different kinds of Option Hunters in this game. That kind of it switches between them on a cycle, so that was the first one. That's kind of the standard one. And in this game, the Option Hunter actually sort of appears on a timer, and it will appear regardless of whether or not you have all 4 options. But the more options you have, the faster it will appear. So if I stay with 4 options the entire time, I will know exactly when and where it's supposed to show up whenever I do runs of this. So the Moai stage, we have a bunch of Moais here. So for those Moais that spawn out of the bigger Moais, which direction they're facing and whether or not they lie down on their backs is RNG. So I kind of just have to adapt to that. If a Moai is lying down and facing you, or if it's just... If a Moai is lying down and its eye is closer to you, or if a Moai is facing you, then it can see you. And as you can see, the Moai spit out a lot of rings on this difficulty. And the rings will just flat out pierce right through your force field, so you really just kind of have to be... You really have to be thorough with taking care of all of them. And there's barely any power-up opportunities here, so again, dying here is pretty much an instant run over. But the spread bombs are really, really good for situations like this, because the nice thing about the spread bombs is that the splash damage can affect other targets, even if it wasn't the target they hit. So, for example, right there with that Moai, I hit one of the Moai's rings, but the explosion hitbox also went into the Moai's mouth, so it ended up killing the Moai as well. I'm going to use the Mega Crash here to take care of those 2 cannons. I want to have laser highlighted by the end of the stage. Again, having the tail gun for the stage is nice, because just the ability to fire backwards is going to be useful both in the stage and then for the bosses. So you might have noticed that I tried to grab those 2 power-up capsules not at the same time. It doesn't really matter in the PlayStation 2 port, but if I were to be playing this like on MAME or on the PlayStation 4 or on an arcade board, if you grab 2 power-up capsules at about the same time, it'll only count as 1 power-up slot advance on the power meter. That was patched in this version, so that won't happen, but I just want to point that out anyways in case you're looking to get into this game. And then here are the monolith Moais. So when you take out all 4 of the given heads in the monolith, it destroys the entire entire set and you can move on. So, funny story. I actually first encountered these moais in Gaiden, where once you destroy all 4 of them, the monolith just stops rotating and it doesn't go away. So when I first played the SNES version of this game, I thought that rule still applied, and when I saw the walls of monolith moais, you can kind of imagine my reaction.
Destroy the mouth.
Alright, so there are actually 2 bosses in this stage, and yes, you can still move the screen vertically there. No big deal. So this first boss is Dogus. It's pretty straightforward to deal with. Funny little glitch you can do. So if you, if I were to have, so those 2 red enemies I killed in the monolith moai section, for some reason if you only kill the top one and let the bottom one live, then Dogus will just spin around infinitely and never attack you, which makes timing this boss out pretty trivial, and it's actually what you would do if you were to try to recover against this boss. But I don't want to die here anyways, because there's this boss. So this is Valve, and I have to be very, very quick on my toes here. So the moais are going to open their mouths in a specific order. I'm going to try to get the bottom left one first. That's bad. So, my goal here is to sort of take out all the moai heads here, and I am in really, really bad shape here. So these inflating moais have really, really big hitboxes. Okay, we're in better shape now. So now I just have these last 2 moai heads to deal with. Okay, I don't know how I pulled that off. That was really close, but that didn't go according to plan. But we're living. Again, dying to this boss is run over. So good thing we made it through. That's definitely one of the scarier fights in the run if one thing doesn't go wrong. Usually you just kill those first 2 moai heads right away and everything's all fine and dandy, but I got kind of thrown off there, so I had to improvise. And improvising is not something you want to do all the time. But we're good, we're good. Didn't have to die and lose the run. So now we're going on to the south stage. So this stage is a lot easier than some of the other stages. It's definitely sort of a calmer stage where you we're gonna kind of have an alteration of easy stage, difficult stage for a little bit. Not to mention this stage has some pretty sick music and a nice little backdrop animation here. We're also gonna see the return of the tentacle golems from the first game. And they behave pretty similarly. You can take out the arms or you can just take out the whole brain. So right here I'm just gonna kind of just stand still and just let my Ripple Laser do the work here. The tentacle golems are another enemy where spread bombs and ripple lasers are a very, very good combination against them. It just wrecks them pretty much instantly. Alright, there's one more here that I kind of have to go out of my way to get it. Nice. And now we're coming up to a Gradius tradition of cell stages that I know many people aren't very fond of, the cell walls. So these are the regenerating cell walls, so I'm just going to kind of go ham on these first few in order to get rid of these first couple of golems. And then the strategy here is to just wait for the walls to be fully regenerated, and then once the walls are fully regenerated, then you can blast through, because if you don't wait for them, then they will regenerate in a semi-random pattern, and it's very unpredictable, and it's very easy for part of the wall to just get caught on you and you die. So patience is sort of a virtue when you play this section. Alright, and there we go. So the boss in this stage is a Gragol, which is sort of a revamp of Brain Golem, if you want to call it that. It's this is a pretty simple fight. Gragol does fire a lot of bullets, so you kind of have to keep an eye on that. But since I have, I think 1 or 2 hits left on this force field, and I have 4 force field left in stock, this should be pretty simple. So yeah, you just gotta attack the eye. Gragol moves in the same pattern every time, so you can pretty easily manipulate it. Now Gragol is gonna fire 2 of its arms out. I'm gonna bait one of the arms to kind of go down here. And then I'm going to destroy this arm so that Gragol flies up towards where that other arm is. Otherwise, he won't. Otherwise, he would have flown to the left side of the screen, and he would have become a lot harder to hit. So I should be able to kill Greg Hole before he does that arm attack again, assuming I got enough damage. There we go. Alright, and now we get to one of the first really, really big hurdles of this game, as if there weren't enough of those already. So stage 7 is the fire stage, and if you played the SNES version of this game, you probably remember that in that stage you get ambushed by a bunch of fireballs, and you can destroy the fireballs and they break into smaller fireballs, and then you can destroy those fireballs. You cannot destroy the smallest fireballs in this version. And not only that, there are way, way more of them coming for you at once. So, yeah, it gets pretty nuts. So the strategy for this stage is actually going to be to try to lag the game as much as possible in order to make weaving between all the fireball patterns a lot easier. So this stage is basically just going to be kind of slow down aiming for a couple minutes, and it will require a lot of focus. So I might be a little bit quiet at some points. I'm going to try to recharge my force field here. This stage is really just about finding whatever openings you can and going for it. You might also notice that I'm not firing my sprint bombs. They have this property where the explosion graphic will actually obscure just about any other sprites. That's not good. So that would include the fireballs, and it would make them a lot harder to see. So just to make it a little bit easier, I'm not firing the sprint bombs, which means since I messed up my button mapping, I am going to have to mash one of the buttons instead of holding it, which is going to hinder my ability a little bit. It shouldn't be too big of a deal, though. And then after this, I don't think I'm going to have to worry about the difference in button mapping anymore. So far, so good. We're coming up on this end section here where it sort of gets a bit narrower. This section, the fireball positions, they are consistent as well. They are the same every time, but when you hit them will determine how they spread apart. So sometimes you can just get a pattern that just completely blocks you off in this tunnel and there's nothing you can do about it. So we should be okay here. That's not completely fine. Okay, so I don't have a force field here, so I'm going to try to play it a little bit safe. These two bosses are sort of easy, but also very, very random. So that was Wyvern, and then this is Vulture Dragon. So if I had a Mega Crash available here, I'd actually be able to instant kill Vulture Dragon with it. But since I don't do that, I'm going to have to fight this boss the normal way, which is just by attacking the two heads here. It's kind of like Intruder from Salamander, except it has two heads. You can get the boss to encircle you for safety. The back head dragon is really the dangerous one because of the sunburst fireballs that it shoots. Also, in the SNES version, those explosion shards can hurt you, but in the arcade version, they can't. So I was not at a risk of dying there. Alright, so we made it through that stage despite losing my force field like 3 times. That's honestly kind of guys. That stage you can recover in if you die, but I'd rather not have to try that. It's not very good. It's not a good idea to try to do that in a marathon, so getting through that stage without dying is preferable. Alright, so this is the plant stage. This stage, if you're going into it with full power, it's a breeze. This stage is really, really easy. And now that I've said that, I'm probably going to die somewhere. Really, just as long as you know what you're doing in the stage and you keep track of everything, it's a pretty chill stage, and it's got some cool music too, so plus plus. So here's an example of just how great this game is. So I'm just gonna fly above this plant like this, and it just despawns for no reason. There's a lot of weird bugs like that in this game. So those plant arms in the SNES version, they instantly kill you. In this version, they just kind of drag you. They try to drag you back into the ground. They're pretty easy to escape from, though, and you can make them retreat by shooting them. So, which is just going to be what I'm going to try to do here. There we go. Another instance of using splash damage there to take out a hatch. So now we're coming up on a boss that's super easy if you have full power and super difficult if you don't. So this boss is Choking Weed, and its gimmick is that when its mouth is open, it will actually try to suck you in. So you have to hold back the entire time while its mouth is open so that you don't get sucked into its mouth and die. Also, it has arms that fire at you, but a little known secret, you can actually destroy the arms if you shoot them enough times. And then now I can have a pretty clear shot in the mouth. I should be able to kill Choking Weed within the first 2 openings of its mouth, assuming I get enough damage in. Again, it's pretty easy if you have full power. So I actually have to hold back here in order to not get too close to Choking Weed, because if you get too close to the mouth, you are going to die. I almost didn't notice my force stroke getting lost in time. There we go. And here we go. Now it's time for Stage 9, everyone's favorite level. So a couple fun facts about this level. So they originally intended for this stage to be a high-speed stage that involved a bunch of pieces of debris basically making the path for you as you went along or something. And then over time it just sort of melded into a Tetris-style crystal stage. And the developer of this stage actually won an arcade board with a special prize version of Salamander for whatever reason. It was part of a level design contest, and it's kind of unclear why this stage won because it is incredibly stupid for all of the wrong reasons. Okay, that's actually not why, that's just me being bad. So one thing about this stage is that it only has one checkpoint. And if you die at any point in the stage, even on the boss, you go all the way back to the beginning. But since there's so many power-up capsules here, this is actually one of the only stages where you can die and reasonably recover. Anyway, and that does mean that this is usually the longest stage in playthroughs, because you're usually going to die here a bunch of times for something you're going to see here at the very end.
Multiple.
So we're going to see the third type of option hunter here in a little bit. You saw the second type in Stage 7. The second type you can actually destroy after it takes your options without a Mega Crash. And then this third type kind of bobs up and down, which makes it a lot more difficult to dodge, especially in this tight space. So there's a bit of a precise setup I came up with in order to do it somewhat consistently. I have to go hide here. And then I have to sort of go back here and quickly maneuver my options so that it doesn't take them. You really want to keep full power in this stage. So, this hatch, the enemies it spawns aren't usually an issue. The splash damage from spread bombs takes care of them. And the cannons that fly in on crystals, you actually get a little bit of extra score if you shoot them before they mount onto the walls. And then here I really want to take out as many of them as possible, so I just have to fly to their positions ahead of time. So that stage is just kind of all about knowing the route until you get here. So here is the Crystal Rush. So I'm going to have 100 cubes flying at me from the right side of the screen. Some of them will rush me. The cubes that rush me are the same every time. But the position of each cube on screen is completely random. And there are a few different patterns you have. But, yeah. The basic strategy is to just kind of sit in the lower left-hand corner and build a wall and pray that you get a good pattern. There are most of the patterns don't allow you to do that effectively, so you're very likely going to die there. Which is why people hate this stage so much, because survival is basically 100% dependent on getting good RNG. So, best case scenario, I get through here and like 1 or 2 tries. Worst case scenario, we could be here all day. There really isn't, and it's really completely out of my control what happens in this stage. Which is, again, the reason why a lot of people hate this stage, because you can just blow 10 lives in a row here too, and have it not be your fault in the slightest. So here's the first kind of option hunter. Again, it cycles between the 3 types of option hunters. So once you get through the third type, it will go back to the first type, and so on and so forth. So go ahead and place your bets now as to how many lives it's going to take me to get through this, if I get through it at all. Because Because you see that I have like about 9 lives in reserve or something. I could lose all of them here. And the only good thing about this stage, though, is that if you do die in here a bunch of times and make it through, it really boosts your score because you get about 20,000 per attempt. So let's just hope I get through this as quickly as possible. So I'm not really going to know if I have a good pattern or not until about cube number 12, which is about the top of the screen right now, I think. Okay. So if you make it this far, that's a good sign. Okay. So this isn't super ideal, but we might be able to work with this. Usually when you make it this far, you're in the clear. But occasionally a cube can still sneak through, because some of the cubes do try to rush you from behind. Really what you want to aim for is a completely sealed off wall. And I'm pretty close to getting that now, so... yeah. So again, I don't know how many different patterns there are, but... yeah, this stage, patience is really just a virtue when you play through this stage, because, again, you could just blow so many lives here. So we should be good to go, right? It's very unlikely that a cube will hit me at this point. But it's not over yet. I could still die, because we also have the boss to deal with, and if I die to the boss, then I'll still go back to the beginning of the level. So this is Lizard Core. It has no firing pattern whatsoever. But you can sort of manipulate it by staying close to its arms, which will actually prevent them from firing. So that's going to be what I do for this fight. It makes the fight a little bit easier, and with 3 speed-ups and 2 options, my options are spread out just enough to where I can pretty easily stay out of its line of fire. Should be killing it here pretty quickly, and there we go. That's the crystal stage. That was very good. That's really good RNG. I'm only getting through there after it only took me 2 deaths to get through that stage, and one that wasn't even to the rush. But we're not out of the woods quite yet with this game. This final stage is really, really hard. So we have 2 parts to this final stage here. This first part is a boss rush. This is actually one of the easier boss rushes in the series, because most of these bosses can be pretty easily killed with spread bombs. So first we have the Tetran from Salamander. It behaves pretty much exactly like it does in Gradius 2. But with spread bombs, you can just kind of do this. Oh, I almost got the insta-kill. It's a lot harder to do the insta-kill with 3 options. If you have 4, it's a lot easier. Yeah, there you go. And then the rest of the bosses from this boss rush are from Gradius 2. So first off here we have Covered Core, and the strategy for Covered Core is pretty simple. You just stay right in front of it. The missiles fire in the exact same pattern every single time. And then here's something kind of fun you can do. So once you take out the barriers, you can actually fly into the spaces that they used to inhabit, and the shields just don't hurt you. Kind of a cool effect. Also with this ground, you can press up against it and you won't die. But if I were to press up against like this part of the ground and I had a force field, I wouldn't lose my force field. So, but that doesn't really matter here. So now I have Big Core Mark II. So there's a baiting strategy you can do for Big Core Mark II here. I'm actually going to lure him to the top of the screen, because when I'm at the top, when both of us are perfectly aligned at the top of the screen, the lasers won't actually be able to kill me. So I can take out that top core pretty easily, and then this bottom core I can just use spread bombs to take care of. And then the next boss is really the hardest boss in this boss rush, but as long as you're careful about it, it's not too bad. It's a Crystal Core. In Gradius 2, there's a strategy, there's a pretty easy save spot where you can just sit perfectly aligned with Crystal Core's barriers and it just kind of keep it frozen in place. You can't do that in this game, so you do have to actually dodge it. And Crystal Core's behavior is somewhat unpredictable, especially with how fast its lasers fire. But slowdown is very, very helpful here. So yeah, this boss definitely takes some of the longest time to kill here. also have to make sure I kill it at a decent time, otherwise the slowdown might catch me off. Because when I destroy this boss, there's going to be an abrupt end to the slowdown, and that might throw me off. Because again, the lasers here fire really, really fast if the game's not lagging. Alright, we're good. Yeah, that's probably the hardest boss in the boss rush, and it's not even that difficult. Again, you just gotta be careful about it. And here we have Death Mark 2. This guy is also from Gradius 2. He's got a couple different phases, and he's already dead. You can actually kill that boss before it even attacks, but I was just a little too slow on the second phase. Now I just have one more boss here. This boss is exclusive to this game. So this is Delinger Core. So if you're not in Delinger Core's direct line of fire, it will actually try to ram you after a few seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bait it to the top of the screen and then bait it to the bottom like this. And then I can move to the top of the screen and let my options make my options sort of do the work here, which makes this fight a lot easier. So I'm basically just kind of repeat that over and over again. This fifth barrier here is a lot harder to take out than the rest. It has a really tiny hitbox on this core for some reason. Alright, so I actually have to fly into the hole where Delinger Core came out of, because now we're going to be moving on to the base stage. Okay, so I have to not die for like the first minute being in this base, because I actually haven't advanced past the boss rush checkpoint yet. So if I die anywhere here, I will have to redo the entire boss rush, and that is not fun. So we're going to have to be a bit careful here. This is easily one of my favorite base stages in the Gradius series. Even if it's really, really difficult, it has some of the most creative design, in my opinion. So we have the lights flickering on and off. That's a really, really cool design choice. So once this first set of red subs appear, I'll be in the clear with the checkpoints. Alright, now I don't have to redo the boss rush, that's nice. And there's a lot of really cool gimmicks in this stage, but some of them aren't really programmed super well. So we have the classic floor breaking off and shooting tiles at you. Pretty standard there. I have a decent amount of lives going into the stage. There are ways to recover in the stage if you die. Hopefully I won't die though. The stage is sort of a really, really long gauntlet, and some of the recoveries are doable, but really, really hard. Now I have this section with a bunch of sort of mini cores. Once you destroy the mini cores, they remain frozen in place, and you are unable to destroy them further. So what I'm going to kind of do is sort of start at the bottom of the screen and sort of make my way up, taking out each row as I go by. That's not good. Alright, so now this hatch is going to do something kind of unpredictable. I should be able to make this work. Alright. That didn't go as planned, but we made it work. Now we have the floor kind of coming out and creating little barriers for us. So this is another instance of hitboxes being kind of weird. So notice how I can shoot through like the top portion of this floor, and I'm very obviously going through the floor there, but that's just because again hit detection is great. So that's actually one place where hit detection is bad, but it works out in your favor. And then here's another pretty cool section. Again, it's cool but annoying at the same time. So you have a bunch of mini clubs from Gradius 2, and they have completely square hitboxes, so you can't actually go between their legs. Instead, you have to hide in these tiny little holes that exist in the walls. And the maneuvering there is somewhat tight, but once you get used to it, it's pretty simple. This part is definitely a scary part, because you're not going to have a whole lot of room here to move when this crab gets out of your way. Then here I have to use my options to take care of all these hatches before they create full health. And This checkpoint is probably the worst checkpoint in the entire game. I'm just gonna say that right here. So these spin lasers are not affected by lag. For whatever reason. I don't know why that is. But that makes it so that if you lag the game too much in this section, it actually becomes nearly impossible to get through here. So I'm gonna be a bit... So that's why I'm not actually shooting that much. Alright, but I should be fine now. Yeah, that's a checkpoint where if you die to it, it's technically possible to recover, but you don't want to do it. And there's an option under that I'm very easily going to dodge. That option under is actually why I didn't activate my fourth option right away when I started the boss rush, because I manipulated it so that it appears at that point, which makes it really easy to dodge. Alright, so now we're at the part of the game where if I die, I'm pretty much in the clear anyways. So this is Disrupt. This is the game's gun vault. If I die to this fight, or if I die to Shadow Gear after this, there is a pretty easy save spot you can use to time this fight out. But if you have full power, it dies pretty quickly. The unfortunate thing about the tail gun is that it does have a bit of a low fire rate because of the 2-shot sprite limit. Okay, so now I have the Crab Walker in this game. This is a Shadow Gear. On the arcade version, the hitboxes of Shadow Gear are super, super busted, so you can actually pass through the legs at various points. You can't do that in this port. So I'm gonna have to do this part somewhat as intended. And I got the good pattern here, so we're good. There's two different initial patterns that Shadow Gear can give you. I think it's dependent on lag. And I happen to get the good one, which is nice. So I'm just gonna kind of cower out in this hole here. And then the Spread Bomb splash damage is gonna help for taking out any duckers that happen to come along here. Here comes a ducker right now, but didn't stand a chance. Alright. And now the game is scrolling at about 1 pixel per frame. We got a very sort of dramatic ending to the game here. So there's this regenerating wall section with meatballs. I call them meatballs. They're probably not meatballs, but they're definitely meatballs. And we have regenerating walls to deal with. The meatballs hitboxes are not super friendly. And this part is especially difficult to navigate with 3 speed-ups. Case in point. The good news is I have plenty of lives, so even if that ends up killing me a bunch of times, I still have a decent shot. And this checkpoint is super, super easy to recover against, so don't be too scared. Yeah, the strats here is pretty simple. With 0 speed-ups, this recovery is actually pretty simple. So I would not normally do this, but since I have plenty of lives, I'm going to do something a little special for the marathon that I would not normally do in regular 1cc attempts. So the final boss of this game is the supposed leader of the Bacterians himself, Bacterian. And Bacterian's attack is he shoots 3 energy balls at you, but that's really all he does. They're super easy to dodge, like any Gradius final boss. And the funny thing is, in this game, hitting the energy balls doesn't actually kill you. You want to see what they do? Alright, so this is this game's bonus stages, and there's actually 2 of them. So this is actually a sort of remake of the first stage of Salamander, or actually actually in the latter half of the stage at this point. So whenever you enter one of these stages, the game strips you of all of your power-ups, which wasn't really relevant there anyway, since I already didn't have any power-ups. So these stages are not normally worth going for in 1cc attempts, but I just figured I'd show it off for the marathon. And as you can tell, the music is pretty much identical to Salamander's music because Gradius 3 and Salamander actually share the same soundboard. I think it's the Yamaha 2151, if I remember correctly. That's its name. We just kind of have this regenerating wall section with a bunch of the brains. So if I die here, it'll put me back at that other checkpoint that I died at earlier, but I'm going to try to make it through this stage. There's very little incentive. Yeah, I threw off my timing there. So if I were to play through that stage, I would have just fought Brain Golem at the end. There's also a similar stage for Gradius's first stage, but since I died in that stage, I'm not gonna bother. Again, there's very little incentive to go through those stages. You don't get that much score from them. But I just figured I'd at least show off that they exist. I would have liked to get through both of them because it is a marathon, and I like to show stuff off. I got through off on my timing there. I don't need that speed up for the recovery, thankfully. This recovery, I said it's easy, and that's kind of true if you're used to it. So one thing, if I were going for multi-loop attempts of this game, I would basically have to reset now, because the thing about this game is that your power-up state actually carries over between loops. So you want to end each loop fully powered, because in this first stage of every subsequent loop, you actually aren't able to get pretty much any power-ups for most of the stage. And the stage is very, very difficult. So now I'm actually going to kill Bacterian instead of going to the other bonus stage. Just kind of have to wait through this long, dramatic scroll forward while you enjoy the groaning faces on the ground. This is actually fighting Bacteria, and as you can see, it's just as difficult as any other Gradius final boss. And enjoy the speech.
Out of the greediness of mankind. While men exist, so will I.
Powerful stuff. But wait, there's more, because now we have a high-speed escape sequence. So this is got some tight dodges you have to do, especially right there. But other than that, not too bad. And there you go. That is Gradius 3. And time. So there you go. That's Gradius 3. I just want to point out that that game is 100% not marathon safe, and I played it with a unusual control scheme, but I was still able to make it work somehow. I'm actually kind of amazed that that happened. So there you go. That's 1cc of the game. Real quick, shameless self-plug. If you are interested in learning this game for yourself, I do have an example 1cc on my YouTube channel, and if you turn subtitles on, you can actually have a text commentary, kind of walk you through all the little intricacies and all of my strategies for each stage. A lot of players have said they found it helpful, so if that's something you think you'll be interested in, definitely give that a check out. So we're just going to kind of sit through the credits here, and then I'm actually going to be switching not only games, but also companies too, as I'm not going away after this. I'm gonna let the staff transition here, and because I'm gonna need to switch discs on my PS2, so you're gonna have to give me a few minutes. So I'll be back in a little bit with Dragon Spirit. So I'll let them throw it over to intermission, and I'll be right back.